Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Walker. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, it has been the year anniversary of Emily's death, and obviously, and I thought that was kind of the saddest thing, because for Walker, he's thinking like, no, it's like, yeah, it's fine, I'm fine, because it's one day, it's like any other day, which obviously we've seen Walker struggle with any other day, so the day in itself isn't going to be any better. In fact, as we see, it ends up being a lot worse, but it's just a thing of like, if he lets that in, he's got to pretend to be okay, I think, for himself as well as for his kids. But obviously, on top of that, Walker's also got to deal with the situation from episode 1, the whole Jordan thing, how he handled that. So obviously, he's getting like a psyche eval to see like whether or not like he was justified in what he did, and potentially it's a situation he could lose his badge. But even Walker says the sad thing is most people are going to have his back because he's a Ranger. So like it is that thing of like almost like it is that complicated and messed up thing where it's like, yeah, he crossed the line, but they give him a little leeway just because of everything. And he's saying like he's like, yes, it's not right, it's not okay, but it kind of works out to his advantage, sadly. So that is an interesting line that kind of gets drawn. Obviously, the bar is kind of breaking down a little bit, and Denise falls, which is a board that Emily bought for him like 6 years ago as a birthday present. I wonder because she was a little drunk when she showed up, so I'm wondering was she drunk when she made the purchase or whatever. But Denise, Hoyt, and Jerry were there, and like Jerry's the one that actually came up with the name Denise. And I love that when it finally does come crashing down or whatever, and he's just like, because it's like, no, it's going to be fine. It's just going to be like any other day. And then almost like an omen, a beam or something fell, it hit and knocked Denise down off the wall. And he's just like, there you go, Denise. Just had to make it all about you. So obviously he's supposed to be going camping with Stella and August. And he's ready to do it because it's supposed to be like something they do with their mom. And so he's ready to do it. But then he gets a call from Jerry that she's selling the bar. And for him, he's trying to make it like, oh, no. It's a crime scene, so you can't really sell it right now. He's, overstepping boundaries because he wants to make it seem like, no. You can't get rid of this place because this place has a lot of memories. But for Jerry, it's like we all need to move on. Like, I get it that this day is hard for you because this is one of Emily's favorite places, and this place holds a lot of memories, not just for you, but for me as well. Because let's not forget, like, there's also the Hoyt thing on her department, but also it's like Emily died a year ago, and because that's also the selfish thing on Walker's part. Like, it's understandable, and no one's trying to call him out for it, but for her, it's like, we're also living in a place where it's a constant reminder of me that my friend is dead. Like, so it's not just you that's suffering, because she's like, I feel it too, so, but, it's time for everyone to move on, but Walker doesn't want to, so he's planning on fixing the place up, because he's not willing to let go, because almost like letting go of this place, it's almost like letting go of Emily. It's like that place holds so much of who she is, and letting it go would be almost like letting her go. It's like, because, and this episode, and I think it's a beautiful episode, obviously we've seen the storyline wise recently, like with WandaVision, about just kind of love and grief and kind of finding a way to move forward. That's kind of what the big part of this show is, but even more so in this episode. And it's kind of about confronting things that you're kind of avoiding because, Mickey has a lot to avoid this episode because her mom shows up, which I even love the whole thing of like, Trey, don't even say words. She's like, no, you can say hi, but just don't say anything like that because you don't want my mom to take any words you use and twist it against you in like Old Testament style. She's like, you know what? But yeah, just don't say anything until I give you the go ahead, until I get her to leave. So because Mickey's like, if my mom's here, it's for a reason. Turns out the reason why she's here, which she's like, oh yeah. She's like, oh, I didn't know you have one of my books. Hey, here's this book about a child. She was alluding to something about like, why the brain structure of why like a child would end up choosing law enforcement. She's like, okay, there we go. She's like, what are you here for, Mom? And it's like, oh, she's like, and she's saying in Spanish like, oh, this guy, seems sweet, and he was like. And he says in Spanish, seems, and it's like, yeah, the sweet guy can speak Spanish too. So I was like, oh, that's kind of a cute moment. But for her, it turns out she's here for work, not just to see Mickey, because it's like, well, in actuality, I'm here to do the vow for and it turns out she's the one evaluating Walker, which obviously for Mickey, she takes it, it's like, you did this. You're the one that's going to be in a position to take away my partner's badge. Because obviously for her, she didn't like Mickey being a cop, so it's almost like, she's like, oh, but it was all chosen at random. Like, it's like, you just happened to pick my partner. It's also like, isn't that a conflict of interest? She must have avoided admitting that was her daughter's partner. I must have kind of let that skate by a lot of people's eyes or whatever, but it's like, yeah, that is a conflict of interest, because even if you are trying to be, you can never be impartial with this, because it would always be like, maybe you could always be potentially swayed to go a different way because this is your daughter's partner. But for her, she looked at this as an opportunity to, like, you're going to try and screw my partner out of his badge so that you can try and manipulate me into kind of feeling bad about my choice as a cop. Like, that's what she feels like her mom does, is tries to make her feel guilty about the choice that she made. So obviously, Mickey goes to the bar where you have Walker trying to fix it, even though he's supposed to be with Stella and August, who are dealing with things in their own right, because Stella is pretty sure their dad's not going to show up. It's like, oh, he's going to find a case. And it's like not even necessarily a case. It's just because for Walker, going on that camping trip would have just been a reminder, and it's just, to be told, he was running away in many different regards, because he was so focused on that, he wasn't hanging out with the kids. But it's also like, by not going with them, it's a good thing, because that way it just would have been a constant reminder. And the bar is a reminder, but at least it gives him something to fix, something to do. Like on a camping trip, it just would have been just sitting there and mulling over everything. At least this time he has a project that kind of keeps him going forward. And obviously Mickey shows up to try and warn about her mom, but Walker's not really listening, to the point he's not paying attention that he ends up literally nailing his hand to a board. And obviously Mickey is like, we're going to have to kind of pull that out. And Walker's just kind of like, no, I'll do it myself. And it's just like, no, I got this. And she's trying to give Walker advice on how to handle the whole situation. It's like, my mom's going to do this, she's going to say that. Like, no one knows my mom's mind games better than I do. And I'm trying to do everything I can, to have your back. And I actually think it's kind of interesting, too, because, like, I'm skipping around a little bit, but obviously it's like she knows, like, oh, my mom's going to use, Emily against you and stuff like that, constantly running through things of, like, are you justified? Hell, even Walker early on catches on to, like, yeah, why he's doing what he's doing, and it's like, oh, like, if you weren't careful, Trey was like, you could have, like, pierced a bone or something, there could have been some damage or whatever, and he's like, I'm not using this as avoidance about my wife. And Trey was like, whoa, man, I was literally talking about your hand, I wasn't using this as some metaphor. He's like, no, I mean, I get what you mean. He's like, yeah, I totally didn't mean that either. It was a metaphor. It's like, wow. So he understood on some level, but he was just in denial. And both of them kind of were, and in one regard of, like, this is a clear example of, avoidance when it comes to grief, that neither one of them really wanted to properly deal with, like, their issues. Walker was using this as an excuse not to deal with everything with Emily, and yes, she was trying to have her partner's back, but also I think it was kind of be a little bit of a middle finger towards her mom, because it's like, well, you're not going to destroy my partner's career because what she does is in people's career. There's also that, but also I think there's a small part of Mickey that was like, this could be an opportunity to get a one-up on my mom. Like, yeah, I win, kind of shut her up, I guess, to a certain extent. But it's also because, it's like for Walker, it's like, you haven't talked to your mom in months. Like, this is an opportunity. She's right here in front of you. Talk to her. But they're both kind of running away in their own regards. And for Walker, it's not a thing of he's sad. He's pissed. He's pissed that, like, some punk like Jordan is finding everything and Emily's gone. And obviously the place that was so important to her is falling apart. It's just, he's angry. And that's what they say sadness is, or what depression is anger turned inwards. But it's just like, he's just angry all the time. It's like, I never felt threatened by someone like Jordan. It was just like he was caught up in a moment. But even Mickey recognizes, like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you were just heated when you said it, but you were right when you said, I could have jumped in, but I didn't want to. Because for her, she didn't want to jeopardize her career at that time, because she was trying to, because she made it clear to Walker at the beginning, like, I don't want to jeopardize my career. And getting involved, his business being his, like, if she had jumped in, she probably was afraid, like, that would look bad on her, because it's like, oh, you don't have your partner's back type of thing. I feel like it could probably get misconstrued and looked at that way. But, at the end of the day, Walker has decided that he is going to plead guilty because he shouldn't get away with it. It's like, because at the end of the day, what he did was go overboard. He was angry, and it's also, you're going to continue to be pissed until you deal with your feelings. You can't just remain pissed. Neither one of us can keep running away from, like, what's our issues. So I thought that was kind of like a very cathartic like moment for them, and also showing that at the end of the day, Mickey has his back and is there for him. It's like, because pleading guilty in this particular case is like, yeah, I'll get suspended, but it's like, yeah, because I do need to take the time. I need it, like, because if I don't, it's just going to repeat this cycle of like me letting my anger get the best of me. Like, I shouldn't be able to just skate away just because of what I'm going through. That doesn't give me the excuse to kind of fly off the handle. And it's like, if you don't fix this now, it's just going to rear its ugly head over and over again. Like, because that anger is just building up and bottling up inside of you. So, interesting, because obviously, like, Legacies is kind of a very, very interesting back-to-back episodes for Legacies. And well, this, because I watched Legacies first before I watched this, but these aired, obviously this aired before Legacies, but it's about bottling a lot of stuff up and kind of having that anger and fear inside of you. So I think it's interesting, the parallels between what Walker's going through and what Hope is going through on Legacy. So it's just interesting, similar yet very different circumstances, obviously. But it does seem like, at the very least, like Mickey is making steps towards amending a lot of fences with her mom. And it's like, oh yeah. It's like, so was it really an accident? Like, was it just pure chance you ended up getting my partner's case? It's like, no, hell no. She was like, but, I couldn't miss an opportunity to teach my daughter a lesson, because it was about, her trying to, I think, also make her daughter kind of not just let Walker slide. Like, obviously, you could tell from the beginning she had some ulterior motive, but I think it was the whole thing to teach her to be like, because for her, it's like the system's corrupt in the sense that, yes, Walker would have been able to just slide, and it's like, it's kind of that, it's almost a little on that blue veil side of things, of like police kind of have each other's back, law enforcement, people in the law department will have, each other's back like that, but it's like, no, like, her mom wanted Mickey to come to the conclusion of like, hey, like, there's a lot of stuff that's wrong in this system. You can't just if you let your partner slide on this, it's just going to be another excuse for someone else later down the line to slide on it, or for him to slide on it. And it's like, no, like, people have to suffer the consequences for what they've done. So I just thought that was an interesting development. Tying this in with the whole situation with Stella and her grandparents, obviously they want to come along. And I even love that Walker's dad kind of points out, like, oh, are you really upset about some boy, Trevor, tagging along? Or are you upset that she didn't turn to you when it was all said and done? And even obviously she's a little snarky with Trevor, but obviously her and Stella talked because, like, she knew how tough this day was going to be. So it's like, I thought that we could kind of lean on each other, which obviously she's like, Marlene, I didn't know I was going to hurt you, but it's like, hey, Trevor's a good guy, so it was a situation where it's like, yeah, like, Stella needed someone, like, obviously Trevor is a good support for her under these circumstances. So it is a situation that it's like her grandma was a little more understanding, and like, right, I've kind of been treating him a little badly, but it's like, he's very nice to you. He's actually a really good kid. Hell, the car broke down on their way. Like, obviously a lot of things went wrong because there was issues of like, oh, Trevor coming along. And it's like, oh, the car, we had to fix that. And then partway through it, eventually Walker called them back. So he wanted them to camp. It's like, let's do your mom's favorite thing, even though she really didn't like camping. But for her, it was that phrase. And it's like, yeah, not all good things have to be good, which is like, that doesn't make a sense. It's like, yeah, your mom had a lot of nonsensical stuff like that, but it was a thing of, I interpret that as like, yeah, just because, not all good things come in the form of not good things. It's like, just because there can be something good, not good, that could lead to something good later on down the road. It's like, yeah, this might seem like not good, but it can lead to something, so even like, for example, it's a terrible circumstances, whether it be the bar being sold or whether it's just, obviously it being the anniversary of Emily's death. But the good that came about it was it brought them closer, because Walker had talked about it. He'd made a promise to to Emily that he would try to make the world a better place for her and the kids. And after losing her, he just kind of stopped trying, and obviously he wants to kind of, keep that promise. It was even sadder too, because obviously it's like, obviously they had to decide, like, obviously with his work being as dangerous as it is, it's like, if you were to die, like, they had to set up wills and stuff like that. It's like, well, if I were to die, like, well, what would you do, Emily? She's like, oh, I'd marry Jerry and start working at the side step. And it's like, what would you do? And he said, I'd grow kind of like a nasty beard and I'd come to this spot every night and drink here, and just to remember you. And sadly, he does. And it's like, also, I'd marry Jerry and start working at the sidestep, being cheeky. But, and it's sad that ended up being the case. So that was kind of, heartbreaking in its own right. But at the end of the day, despite these circumstances, it's like, him and his kids are closer. It's like that was also a thing too, because it isn't just him. They're obviously going through the same thing this day as well. So wanted to do camping in her favorite place, that being the bar and everything, the sidestep. And I thought it was kind of a beautiful moment, even when the kids are asleep and he's there seeing her, Emily. And obviously for him, it's like, he feels like he's not doing a good job, but obviously for Emily, it's like not everything can be fixed. And even if the things that can be fixed, it can't all be fixed in one day. It's going to take some time, but you'll get there. I know it, Not all good things have to be good. He was like, that doesn't make any sense, babe. But she disappears, and it's just like, damn. It's a very... obviously, like I said, heartbreaking circumstances, but it's like, yeah, this place can't necessarily be fixed up, so they kind of have to let it go. Jerry shows up because she got an offer, but August and Stella kind of suggest, well, what if we use Mom's life insurance, which he got earlier in the episode? What if we use that to buy the sidestep, and then we can fix it up, and this way it can kind of be like a family-owned thing, because Mom would want that, so it stays in the family. And I didn't even cross my mind to even think about that, because I'd actually forgotten, like, right, he got the life insurance check from Emily, for Emily, like earlier at the beginning of the episode. And I thought that was a beautiful way for that to kind of come full circle. So it's like, Jerry's like, okay, can we put in our offer? And she's like, no, I just got a better one. And just kind of smiling and hands the keys over to them. So I thought that was pretty dope. Even them sharing that snickerdoodle, because it was the last thing that Emily had made. It's like, yeah, it might be a little freezer burnt, might not be any good, but it's like, no, they're like, this is good, because it's like the last thing their mom made. It's the last thing she did, So I don't know. It's a bittersweet beautifulfulness to it, So there's that side of things. Well, we also have like some other complicated angles included in the episode. One I thought was kind of pretty cool, that Walker was like, playing the role of dad, and like, I'm Walker, Texas. And at first I was like, did he not know her last name or something like that? Because it seemed like he was caught off guard by Walker. I was like, what the hell is that? I was like, is he going to have beef with Walker or something like that? Lo and behold, yes, he does. Because it's interesting, because Walker brings it up this episode of like, yeah, it was easier being Duke than it was himself, Hence why like he immediately jumped into a case 2 months after Emily died. But also, it turns out, hey, the leader of that group, lo and behold, turns out Trevor's his kid, which is so sad, because like Walker's mom was warming up to him, I was like, oh, he's kind of a good kid, gave him all the food. Obviously his mom died recently, which I'm wondering, was that well, he said recent, well, that would have been recent, like, I'm wondering, is Crystal his mom? Was Crystal his mom? Makes you wonder. Because now it's also probably a thing of like, it's like, yeah, he ends up telling his dad later on, it's like, oh, that looked like that Duke guy. It turns out he's a Walker, Texas Ranger. And I think, he's a Walker, Texas Ranger. He's a Texas Ranger, sorry. And I think he's the reason why you're here. And he's like, because we know Emily died. Not Emily, but we know his mom, Crystal, well, if that is his mom, died. He said like, oh, she died recently, and it's like, well, that was recent. That was at the end of the whole Duke situation. So that's if that ends up being the case, he might even blame. I mean, to be fair, it was your dad's fault. The reason why things went down that way, like Walker was the one that was suggesting handling things a different way. She died like hiding the money and stuff like so. I guess that was even potentially. I don't know if maybe they didn't even talk about the fact is they had kids, so I'm sure that's something that Walker wasn't even aware of. So interesting how that, like, I think it makes you, that's interesting at the end of the day. So I guess it's just funny how life works out. August ended up contacting Twyla, and that kind of opened up the can of worms. But this can of worms was already getting opened up because Stella met Trevor, and that's going to open up, like I said, a whole can of worms in its own right. It's just interesting that both kids have kind of opened that door to the Duke, even though like he tried to let that pass go. You try to let go of Duke, but Duke's not completely done with you. At least the life Duke was associated with isn't done with you. So it's interesting how it's striking back like this now, because eventually what happened is probably going to get to Twyla too about, because Twyla's probably the reason why he knows that Duke is dead. But now it's like, wait, he's not. He was a Texas Ranger. Wait, all that we went through. So that's going to be, I mean, to be fair, she turned on him in the end of the day, but still there was something there. So I don't know. That's going to be a really, really interesting development, especially as because, like, you know, they had that, like, Walker's parents had that whole conversation about him not being so okay with her bringing Hoyt into the family, and like, you're so gung-ho and accepting of Trevor, and he's like, oh, I'm evolving. It's like, you had a right to be reluctant about Hoyt. She has a right to be reluctant about Trevor. So it's interesting how you both are kind of right at the end of the day with that regard. But another interesting piece of this whole situation is obviously you had Liam and James going to visit Carlos. And I thought it was really fascinating where it's just like Liam's just kind of saying a dick thing of like, oh, he didn't want to talk to us. Yeah, it had something to do with your jacket. James looking down like, wait, what the hell's wrong with my jacket? And then later on, like, they were like, oh, we need someone to inside. I was like, are you going to get an undercover cop to talk to him? And lo and behold, we bring Hoyt. And I was like, that makes sense. And it turns out it's like, oh, nice jacket, Larry. And James is looking down at jacket. He's like, what the hell is up with my jacket? Why is everyone shitting on me about it? But they tell him, like, okay, we're giving you a new bunkmate, and it's going to shave some time off of your sentence. And it's Carlos. It's like, whoa, yeah. Because it's like, oh, who do you want me to shiv? It's like, we don't want you to shiv anybody. Okay, it's double speak. Who do you not want me to shiv? And so, but he's like, yeah, if you put me in there, I might kill the guy. But then it's like, wait, you guys are thinking he might not. So you guys arrested the wrong person for killing Emily. It's like, well, we don't know for sure. That's why we're not even telling Walker, because we're just going on a hunch here. So I'm curious, like, what they necessarily came across that footage, because they never really went into what they actually saw that proved like there was something more with Emily's murder. Maybe Carlos wasn't at the right place at the right time or something like that, or maybe he was in some place that it's like, if you had killed Emily where she was and there's no way you could have gotten to this particular place at this particular time, maybe it's something like that. I don't know. But Hoyt, being who he is very good at talking to people and kind of getting him to let the guard down. So he ended up getting Carlos. And yes, Carlos did open up, but it's like, yeah, it was only 2 hours, but it's not about what people say. I thought he was going to say specifically it's about what they don't say, but it's also about, you know, what they put in them. And he turned out like the medicine, what the injection marks are from him taking a ALS drug, a drug to kind of fight ALS. And obviously, he's getting it through other channels, and that's why he's so willing to take the fall for Emily's murder, because he's already dying, so, you know, and the only person he has to look after, it seems like, is his niece, and it seems like she's being taken care of. So they do some investigating on their own, and obviously, like, she owns a little art place, and she's making, like, $50,000. At first, I was like, is her place being used to launder money? But it's like, no, it's hush money. And so it's like, all right, so where's this money coming from? They look into it, the particular LLC. It's the one Jerry uses for the sidestep. And obviously she just sold it and she's leaving. So it's like, I just had a feeling like, obviously, like, even how she brought it up earlier in the season, like, she revealed that there was more with the Emily thing of like, oh, I'm the one that closed her eyes, like, which is like, she's either she was the one that killed Emily or she's part of it. Like, Emily stumbled across it. Once again, her and Jerry was supposed to meet up, and it was like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just, Jerry just happened to, after all this time, drop some details, and it's like, now it seems like now you're doing that because you wanted Walker to stop investigating, because if he looked too deeply, like, maybe there was more to it about, like, the chip she had on her and everything. Granted, we found out what that was about, but maybe there's still a lot of moving pieces to this. Like I said, either Jerry herself pulled the trigger or someone she's involved in. But it also makes it that much more twisted. Like, that's why you probably wanted to get out of town, because you probably were like, you were just waiting for the opportunity. But the fact is, you have the nerve to smile and act like everything's okay, and you have some connection to this. Or maybe it's a red herring. I don't know. Like, maybe Jerry's in this alone. Maybe she's associated with some bad people, and Emily stumbled across some of her bad dealings. And it's like, yeah, because Jerry and her were like good friends. I was like her best friend, and for you to be betrayed by I mean, hell, it's kind of like Walker and Hoyt. Like, granted, not to the same extent, but still, like, Hoyt kind of got into trouble a lot, so that's definitely going to be interesting. It's also going to be interesting, too, because, like, I think you would also draw parallels between Trevor and Hoyt, because Walker's mom was like, you know, just because of your family situation doesn't make you have to kind of repeat history in that regard. So hopefully Trevor doesn't go down that path trying to help his dad get revenge or whatever, especially because I think he genuinely does like Stella, but obviously things got complicated now finding out who her dad is and what he's done, and also the fact is he put her dad away. So I think that's going to turn into a particularly nasty situation, but I'm really, really interested to see where all this ends up taking us. I didn't even talk about the other stinger. We see Mickey's mom getting arrested at the end of the episode, and it's almost like she's not shocked by why it's happening. It's like it's federal warrant or something like that. So it's like, what did she do? What's going on here? Just as Walker is about to plead guilty, I guess it's like he's going to try to sidestep that for a little bit because he's got to help Mickey go through, you know, deal with whatever this is, which is like, I guess that's an extra reason why she came to see Mickey, because maybe she knew this was coming down the pipeline, or maybe she got connected to some shady dealings of her own. I don't know what to expect. I'm really curious to find out what that's all about, too. So, especially just as her and Mickey are making amends, potentially. So, like I said, a lot of interesting things. I'm really interested to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.